throw it on safe.
Or don't. Have your finger be the safety.
Okay, Black Hawk Down. Hey everybody, welcome to the Hard Times Strong Men podcast. Today we're going to be talking about one of the basic fundamentals of soldiering, shoot. So today we're going to teach you what a firearm is and how to safely use it. You should be able to define that by the end of this. So by the end of this, you're going to be able to understand the basics of being familiar with what a firearm is and how to safely handle one. This is important because if handled improperly, a firearm is a very dangerous tool. If used improperly, it can kill, maim, wound just about anything out there. Whatever it is, if it's handled improperly and it goes off, it is going to essentially destroy whatever it is aimed at. So we want you to be able to expand your knowledge base if you don't know anything about these. You should be able to be comfortable around a firearm, even if it makes you nervous, but you should be able to be comfortable enough to be able to pick it up and train with it and know what you're doing with it. So Seven, why don't you get into the basics? What is a firearm?
Yeah, so a firearm is a device, a tool that expels a projectile and, with the intention of destroying whatever it comes into contact with. So historically, this has been used to fight wars, to defend one's person, and for hunting. So talking about safety, because if used improperly, this can kill you or your friends. 4 rules of gun safety. Rule number 1, treat every firearm as if it is loaded. You need to have that respect. Rule number 2, always point your firearm in a safe direction. So by pointing, I mean barrel, muzzle in a safe direction, either down. I prefer down, or some people say up in the air, away from anything that you don't want to destroy. Okay?
Right. Or if you're at a range, it's always pointed downrange.
Yes. Rule number 3, keep your finger off the trigger until you're ready to shoot. Barring a mechanical malfunction, the rifle, the firearm, will not go off unless you pull the trigger. So keep your finger off the trigger until you're ready to shoot wherever you're pointing at. And rule number 4, always be sure of your target and what's beyond it. So following these 4 rules, you will not have, one, you will not have a negligent discharge. And 2, you will not hurt anybody you don't intend to. Focus in on your target. You need to focus on what's behind it too, because terrain features come into play. That's just...
And by negligent discharge, you mean firing the gun when you don't purposely mean to.
When you do not
That's
purposely
a negligent
mean
discharge.
To. Yes, exactly. Thank you.
So let's get into the familiarization portion of this. Let's get into the basic universal components. And I say this because if you don't own a firearm, or if you do have a firearm, if you pick up somebody else's firearm, you shouldn't have to worry. You should know this stuff because every firearm is going to have these basic components. And you should be able to, just by even turning the weapon over, you should be able to find these basic components. So every firearm has a trigger. Every firearm has a barrel. Every firearm has a charging handle or slide or some other chambering mechanism. So for shotguns, it could be a pump. It could be a charging handle on the side. Break action shotguns, that could be a hammer. Machine guns, that could be, again, a massive charging handle of some sort. And every firearm has a aiming device. You're not going to go smooth barrel and be able to hit something accurately. No weapons designer is going to put that out there. So you're going to have some kind of sights, some kind of optics, something like that. With that, let's get into the functions of it. This is how every firearm operates. So if you understand these basics, you're going to understand what's going on in your hands. So you're not going to be surprised by what happens with the function of this weapon when it's used. So every firearm feeds. When we talk about that, we're talking about a round, a bullet, whatever, being stripped from the magazine, from the belt, whatever, and chambered into it. So every firearm feeds a round into the chamber, which every firearm also has. Every firearm chambers a round. Every firearm should fire. If it doesn't, you're having issues with some kind of function, and you need to get that fixed.
Refer to the last 2 bullet points. The great thing about
Yes.
learning the functions of a firearm is you can backtrack and you can identify a malfunction. Most oftentimes with magazine fed, that's the failure point.
100%. So every firearm feeds, every firearm chambers, every firearm should fire, and every firearm will eject the spent round, which this could be automatic in the case of semi-automatic weapons. This could be manual in the terms of, say, a bolt-action rifle, where you actually have to work the bolt itself to extract and then feed a round. And every firearm needs to feed again. This isn't done by magic. You're not going to hold down the trigger unless it's been modified to fire full automatic. But even in that sense, it's still going to feed another round in the chamber. It's not like everything, all the bullets come out at one time. It feeds, it chambers, it fires, it ejects, and then it feeds again. It's just a big, big cycle.
A firearm is a machine. It's a tool. Yep. It's a machine, pure and simple. So if you understand the basic mechanics of your machine, then you'll know how to fix it if something goes wrong.
And again, those were just the basic functions. We could get into the 7 functions of a firearm cycle, like we learned in basic training, but we're not going to do that because that is so freaking boring.
Right. Well, not even boring. It's not pertinent right now. So with this class, we're not going into marksmanship. We're focusing on weapons familiarization, 0 to hero. So the objective of this class is you should be able to pick up any firearm that you come in contact with. Not talking about muzzleloaders. That.
Oh my God!
And
no.
You should be able to use it. That being said, all right. So how to clear a firearm, and by clearing I mean making safe, because very specific things need to happen for a firearm to discharge. Most important being the firearm has to have a round in the chamber. So always point the firearm in a safe direction. That's one of your gun safety rules. That should be implied. That should be a natural action. So number 1, put your weapon on safe. Not all weapons have safeties. If applicable, put your weapon on safe. Then eject the magazine if it has one. Then pull the charging handle or the slide to the rear. You should be observing the chamber. You should watch that round eject. Alright, that's your secondary, tertiary checks. When you've seen that you've ejected the magazine, rack the slide to the rear, the charging handle to the rear, you saw that round eject, there's nothing in the chamber, you can release the charging handle or the slide. Special considerations would be for bolt guns, for pump action shotguns, for lever action rifles, for break actions, machine guns. We're not going to get into the nitty gritty. The point being, make sure that there are no rounds in your chamber, magazine, tube, whatever.
It's the same basic thing.
Same basic thing. If there are no rounds in the firearm will not fire. All right. So basic weapons manipulation. It's talking about getting the gun up. So getting your firearm ready to fire. So make sure the weapon's on safe. Make sure the weapon's pointed in a safe direction. At that point, feed the firearm. So when we're talking about AR pattern rifles, AKs, handguns, insert the magazine. Make sure it's seated properly. A lot of guys like to do the second tap to make sure it's stuck in there. At that point, you would rack the slide back, pull the charging handle back, release it. That's going to shove the bolt forward, slide forward. You're going to chamber the round. Okay, obviously special considerations for like lever actions, pump actions. Point being, get a round in the chamber. At that point, your weapon is considered red, but you still have your safety on, going in a safe direction. You're safe, but you have your gun in the fight.
Yeah, exactly.
Clearing a malfunction. In the Army, we were taught 3 ways of clearing malfunctions: tap, rack, bang, pops, and sports. Tap, rack, bang, and pops are considered immediate action drills, meaning as soon as your gun goes down, this is the drill that you perform immediately to get your gun back in the fight. So tap, rack, bang is for AR or AK powered rifles and handguns. So tap, you're tapping the bottom of your magazine, making sure that's firmly seated in your firearm. Rack, racking the slide, racking the charging handle. and bang, you're pulling the trigger, and gun should go bang. Pops is for machine guns. So you're pulling the charging handle back, you're observing the chamber, you're pushing the charging handle forward, and you're squeezing the trigger. And sports is considered remedial action. So after you've done your immediate action drill and that doesn't work, then you go into remedial action. So S, you're slapping the bottom of your magazine up, making sure that it's firmly seated in your firearm. P, you're pulling your charging handle back. O, you're observing your chamber. R, you're releasing your slide or your charging handle. T, you're tapping your forward assist. And S, you're squeezing the trigger. I wanted to highlight these three methods because they're all similar in the fact that they're forcing the firearm through its basic functions. You're ensuring that the firearm feeds, you're ensuring that the firearm extracts, you're ensuring that firearm chambers, and then you're ensuring that the firearm fires.
All right, and we want to talk about the 4 fundamentals of marksmanship. So, steady position. Your non-firing hand should have slight rearward pressure. So slight pressure, slight pulling pressure towards the shooter. If you're firing a rifle, the rifle buttstock should be in your shoulder pocket. And if you're firing a rifle, you should have a good cheek weld. So your cheek should be tucked into the stock. Your cheekbone should be resting on that stock. You should have good sight alignment in that position. Aiming. You should be focused on your front sight, meaning in a front and rear sight system, the rear sight should almost be faded out. You should be only focusing on that front sight. That's how you're going to get good alignment and good target focused. And you should be firing with both eyes open. That allows you to have good situational awareness. That allows you to be able to make good target transitions and overall be faster. Breath control. So when firing at single targets or when you're zeroing a rifle or handgun, you should be waiting for that natural respiratory pause. So after that exhale is when you should be pulling the trigger to the rear and actually firing your firearm. For multiple targets, you should be holding your breath to squeeze off those rounds. Use your discretion. Use critical thinking when you're holding your breath. You don't want to overextend that breath and have to regain that natural respiratory cycle. That's going to throw off your aim. And trigger squeeze. So your trigger finger generally should be, your trigger should be generally between your first joint on that trigger finger and between that first joint and the end of your finger. When you're pulling the trigger straight to the rear. Don't anticipate the shot. So a lot of guys, you can even see it in real time when you're dry firing with a handgun, especially if you anticipate the shot, you're dipping that handgun down when you pull the trigger. That's going to throw you off. It used to be taught that every time that you fire your firearm, it should be a surprise. That's not true. That's not having good control of your firearm, right? But you shouldn't be anticipating the recoil. You should still be loose, still have control. Don't tense up right before your trigger actually breaks, okay? And don't jerk the trigger. So when you pull the trigger, you're pulling straight to the rear, and it should be a smooth, controlled motion, not slapping the trigger back. And further training. So with anything, guys, you need to be seeking out a network of people who are better than you. Try to surround yourself with subject matter experts, people who are better than you are, so that you can rise to their standard and so that you can all grow together. Okay? If you're able, if you have the financial and time means, take a class from a firearms instructor. Now, when you're picking this instructor, pick someone who doesn't hide behind certifications, awards, whatever. They should be able to demonstrate everything that they're teaching you. So in our community, great examples would be T-Rex Arms, Haley Strategic, Orion Training Group. Okay, these guys take a great hands-on, student-focused approach, and they can actually show you what they're teaching. That's great in an instructor. You don't want someone who's going to hide behind
a bunch of plaques on their wall. You need someone who can actually show you. They should be trying to work themselves out of a job. That's what we're trying to do here. We're trying to work ourselves out of a job. We're trying to raise the standard of everybody so that this isn't new information. Okay. That being said, you can do a lot of this training at home. So if you're not familiar with it, dry firing is the act of firing a handgun, rifle, a firearm without actually expending any ammunition. Okay, so no bolts in the magazine, no bolts in the chamber, but you're going through the motions of firing the weapon. So this will help you with your trigger control. This will help you with basic weapons manipulations. You can practice reloading, field stripping, immediate and remedial actions. Just getting hands-on with your firearm is absolutely invaluable. So with that being said,
so this has been our basic weapons familiarization and safety class. This kind of thing has been taught all the way back to the beginnings of firearms. This was the kind of thing that was used in the American Revolution with the militias, with the regular army. This was the kind of thing that was used by the French, Dutch, and Jewish resistance. When it comes to shooting, they had to know these things. And this is the kind of thing that the civilians of Ukraine have been having to learn. Because, not gonna lie, a lot of them probably have had no experience with firearms, have been in the same situation that you now find yourself in. But that's why we're here. We're trying to convey this information in a way that is easy to understand.
Also, I just want to say, as far as shoot, firearms are the great equalizer.
100%.
If you're talking about a woman walking, in the street at night, if you're talking about civilians facing a conventional army, firearms are the great equalizer.
100%.
They are an incredible tool for protection, for hunting, for warfare. They bring everything everybody onto an equal footing. So you need to know how to perform this basic task.
Right. Because when your life is on the line and you're facing a 300-pound attacker and you're a 100-pound, say, woman, a restraining order is just a piece of paper. It is not going to stop that 300-pound person from taking you out. A firearm 100% will cause him to second guess exactly what he's planning on doing. And even decide, you know what? I'm not going to do this. I'm not going to do this. So it will...
And
go ahead.
Sorry, I was just going to say, and think about we talked about last episode with Ukraine. Okay? Everyone was saying, oh, Russia's just going to blow right through them. No sweat. But if you hand every farmer in every village an AK, it's suddenly a much bigger problem.
Oh, yeah. Oh, yeah. I guarantee those Russian forces, once they realized that these civilians were now armed, were second-guessing going into towns. Or they were having to up what they were going to bring into that town.
100%.
Absolutely.
And that's what we're trying to get at with this Guerilla series, is we need to get up to that level. Everybody does.
Right. 100%. 100%. So this has been Shoot. Hopefully by now you've learned what a firearm is, how to be safe with it. You're familiar now with the basic components, the basic functions, how to make it safe.
How to clear it.
Exactly.
To make it.
Yeah. And even how to manipulate it to getting it into the fight. Coming up in the next episode, we're going to be talking about move. Stay tuned. We got a lot of good stuff coming for you.
Stay safe. Be better. Bye, everybody.